Hi, I'm Kimberli Fitzgerald. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem in Oregon, and in my first term at Adams State working towards my Cultural Resources Management degree. This is a presentation about historic survey in Oregon's local jurisdictions. So the City of Salem is a certified local government, and local governments who have been certified by the National Park Service have certain performance standards that they have to meet, and doing historic survey is one of those responsibilities. Other responsibilities include compliance activities like having a qualified landmarks commission and enforcing preservation legislation and ordinances. So one of the benefits of being a certified local government is that you get access to grant funding. So Salem has received about $250,000 in funds through the CLG program since 1986. So it's a great program. So since survey is one of the CLG's responsibilities, what is historic survey? Well, it's not a questionnaire. Historic survey is an inventory of properties that are at least 45 years old and retain reasonable architectural integrity. Historic surveys are often used as planning tools as part of redevelopment activities or community plan updates. There are a couple different levels of historic survey. So our reconnaissance level survey, also known as windshield survey, is a quick type of survey where resources are photographed and the material and style of the building are recorded. Intensive level survey is usually done on significant properties and involves more detailed information collection and historic research. So we know it's a responsibility of the local government. We know what it is, so we can get to work surveying. Oh no, someone's angry at us. We forgot about the property owners. Some of them may not want us to survey their property. Do we have to listen to them? Why do you think they wouldn't want us to do this good work? So that's the first question we're going to try to answer for ourselves. This is our first exercise, and I'd like you to think about why maybe you wouldn't want someone surveying your property, coming out and taking pictures. I'm going to give you some responses that we received from students at a class I lectured at a couple weeks ago. So what they thought was the folks would think that survey leads to designation and regulation, and that this would then mean that they would be told what to do with their property and they wouldn't want anybody telling them what to do. That then as a result their property taxes would go up. But the most interesting one was they would be paranoid that you would be casing the joint to later come back and rob them. And that one is a pretty prevalent thought here in Oregon, so strong that a couple of years ago the legislature passed a law removing that requirement, where folks would have to open their houses to the public once a year if they were on special assessment. So, yeah. So how did we get here? And do we really have to, are we required to listen to these property owners who don't want us to survey? So let's look at the laws here in Oregon and to answer that question. So preservation in Oregon actually began with Goal 5. Goal 5 was adopted in 1974 as part of a bigger picture statewide planning program that was prepared by the Land Use and Conservation Commission. Goal 5 describes how cities and counties are to plan and zone land and conserve both natural resources and historic resources. So about 20 years later, this law was passed, ORS 197772, and this was in response to a group of upset property owners who did not want to be regulated. And so now local jurisdictions are required to get owner consent to survey or designate historic properties. So now we know the answer to that question. We do have a legal responsibility to listen to these owners. So what do we do about it? seems like we now have to convince these owners to consent for us to survey and designate their properties. So let's take a look at what sort of tools we might have at our disposal to help us do that. So do you think city planning could help us? So what is city planning? Planning is a tool. This tool is used to control and manage the construction and growth of a city or town. Zoning is used to define primarily where different kinds of uses can be located. And design standards are tools that are used as part of certain kinds of zones, like conservation overlay districts that regulate design. And the Secretary of the Interior standards are often used as design standards for districts or overlays. And in the history of planning, there was a City Beautiful movement in the late 1800s, which championed well-planned and beautiful cities. So one of the tools we could use to respond to these owners is this planning tool. Survey can help us to know what kind of resources we have and to help us plan our cities in a better way and help keep them beautiful. So what about historic preservation advocates? Can they help us? Let's take a look really briefly at historic preservation advocacy in the United States. So essentially, there were two kinds of advocacy early on, private and public. So the private sector revolved around saving buildings that belonged to well-known historic figures, usually centered on patriotism. So you can see here in the picture Independence Hall and Mount Vernon. These were one of the first resources that were saved by private groups. And then the public sector really focused on preserving parks and resources, historic resources associated with natural areas. So like the National Park Service, that's where a lot of the laws were, and enforcement of the laws relating to preservation were established. And so now, for example, in Oregon, the State Historic Preservation Office is in the State Parks Office. So, but the National Park Service, in fact, has a program right now called This Place Matters, and it really provides some help to local jurisdictions by helping us have ways to reach out to the community and helping them identify what resources matter to them. So this is a tool that might be helpful to us in answering that "so what" question. We can help them see what matters to them in their community. So I think we need to look now at the key question: how will we be using the survey results? And we need to share that with our property owners. So one of the certified local government's responsibilities is education. So we need to be able to educate the public regarding historic preservation in the community, and specifically talk about how we're going to use these survey results. So what are some ideas about what we can do? So we could create historic markers. Look at that property owner. He has a great marker that tells cool information about his property. He's super happy about it. We could do wayfinding signs. These are some we have in Salem. They talk about the history of the neighborhood. And we could also do walking tours. That's also a fun way to get people some information about the neighborhood and the history. So another great tool is to work with the neighborhood and not just owner by owner. That really helps because you're starting by working with people who already care about what happens to their neighborhood. In Salem, we have many active neighborhood associations, and we recently created the Salem Heritage Neighborhood Program, where we work with one neighborhood a year to do historic survey, and then we do some fun projects to help them celebrate their history. So now we're going to do our last exercise, and hopefully this will be easy for you because we just went over some great ideas. So let's pretend that you are now answering the concerns of that angry property owner. What would you tell him? What are some of the benefits of historic survey? So the students a couple weeks ago said you could share with them that it's a planning tool to help them keep their neighborhood beautiful. They could use the history of their house to help tell their community's history through markers or walking tours or those wayfinding signs. And honestly, understanding the interesting history of their house could help make it more valuable if they ever want to sell it. So, in conclusion, successful local historic survey really begins with communication with the neighbors and the property owners about the value of the survey and involving them in how they can use that survey data to help promote the history and understand how their neighborhood matters to them and the larger community. Thanks for listening today, and if you have more questions, you can contact me at kfitzgerald@cityofsalem.net.